talk about this weird and wonderful community we have and what makes it tick. So, as it turns out, furries spend a tremendous amount of time interacting online. Almost 80% of furries say they frequent some kind of forum or website with at least once a week or so. And this can be regional groups, this can be through things like instant messaging programs or Telegram. I have Twitter on here because you may have heard of the hashtag #TweetFur. If you haven't, the fine folks over at Twitter pointed out that please don't anthropomorphize the Twitter logo. If you know anything about psychology, there's this wonderful thing called psychological reactance, which is when you say don't do something, well, don't do it. Well, yeah, so that about what as you'd expect, right? So it says you knew this was going to happen, right? So. All right, furries spend a lot of time on the internet. As you can see here, they spend most of it on Fur Affinity, apparently. About 96% of furries worldwide use Fur Affinity or have an account on Fur Affinity of some sorts. We find Telegram is also a very popular way of furries interacting with one another. DeviantArt, E621, you can sort of see the most popular sites on there. Some of these, again, are region-specific. This was a big worldwide, so if you don't recognize some of these sites, it's because they're sort of in other regions. But furries don't just interact online. So they spend a lot of time interacting online because furries can be very geographically diverse, right? So sometimes you may not know another furry in your city, right? But you can go to a convention and be sure to find a bunch of them. As it turns out, about 1 in 3 furries attend some kind of local meetup, some regional meetup. Whether it's to go bowling with the Klingons here, or to go to some kind of parade. We also find that about half of furries make it out to some kind of convention a year. You know, conventions like this one, Anthrocon, Midwest Fur Fest. I'm going to Eurofurence for the first time this year, so I'm going to check out that one. And basically, wherever you're at, there's a furry convention within driving range of you. It's not too hard to find, and this is a wonderful map, by the way. You should go check it out somewhere online. But yeah, there's a wonderful, anywhere you can, right, anywhere you are, you can find a furry convention within range of you. If you're wondering what the most furry state is, by the way, wait, the statisticians among you will say, well, hold on. Like, Texas is one of the biggest states by population. California is one of the biggest states by population. You have to control for population. Sorry. What happens when you control for population? Anyone want to guess what the most populous, the most furry state is? As it turns out, Texas is 4th. Not too shabby, right? They have more furries than you would expect. And actually, Washington is apparently the state to be in if you're furry. California is decidedly not the state to be in if you're furry. They have a lot of furries, but not as many as you'd expect based on their population. Sorry, California. How many of you have heard of post-con depression before? PCD. People kind of joke about it, oh my gosh, I totally have PCD. It's a real thing. We've measured it. A few years ago at Anthrocon, we actually measured furries' mood, we measured how they were feeling, their levels of depression and anxiety at the con. That's the blue bars. And then a week later, we followed up with those same furries and measured these exact same things. And look at what you find. They feel more bothered, more upset, more depressed. Their mind wanders more. Everything feels like more of an effort, and they're less happy in the week following a convention. This is kind of important to note, especially if this is your first convention. Right? There is this sort of rush of euphoria when you come here, and then it can kind of hurt sometimes to go back to reality. So one of the things I would suggest is keep in touch with the furries you meet here. Get their contact information. See if you can hit up your local furry group. Try to have that social support network there so that you don't come crashing down when you get back to day-to-day life. Right? Keep in touch with the folks you meet here. This is an important community for folks here. So keep in touch. Don't wait for a year until the next convention to add someone on Telegram or to get their FA account. This is a random question we got asked. What do furries do when they're around other furries? Because a lot of folks don't know. And so we asked folks, well, when you hang out with other furries, how is it different from when you hang out around non-furries? And a few things emerged. This is kind of a weird list, but a funny one. Hugging, cuddling, physical affection. A lot more physical touch happens around other furries. than around your non-furry friends. You might give your furry friend a hug. It might be a little bit weird to hug your non-furry friend, right? Cuddling is something that's pretty open in the furry fandom, not so much around average people. Certainly a lot of furries, only bust out their furry t-shirt or their tail or their ears at a furry convention, right? Outside of that, a lot of furries don't really wear this stuff out and about. Sharing furry content, talking about your favorite artists, sharing jokes and memes within the fandom. You only really get to do that with your furry friends. Making animal noises, scritching, howling. Apparently you don't howl in general public. I don't know why. That's apparently a furry spaces only kind of thing. This is an important one. A lot of furries say they act a lot more outgoing. They're a lot more social around their furry friends than they are around non-furry friends. For a lot of furries, these spaces that we create, these conventions, these local meetups are some of the only times they get out and get to socialize with other people. That's important because this quote kind of says it all here. With this fandom, you can walk in and they act as if they've known you all their life. And for many of you for whom this is your first time coming out here, you may have felt that feeling of this big kind of family embracing you. You kind of feel, in some ways, like this is sort of the first place where you kind of belong. And that's one of the big draws to the furry fandom, is this particular feeling. So let's talk about furry relationships. Whatever you're into, whether you're straight, gay, or, you like sandwiches, I guess. Whatever you're into, you can find it here in the furry fandom. Okay. So as it turns out, if you're a female furry in particular, you're much more likely to already kind of have a partner. Male furries in the fandom, many of you are still single and looking. As it turns out, though, an important moderator of that is whether you're straight or gay. As it turns out, the fandom is a very LGBTQ plus friendly space. We see here that if you're straight in the fandom, you're actually in quite a considerable minority. Bisexual people tend to be the largest majority in the fandom, followed by gay and lesbian people. But even then, no one is sort of in the 50% plus category. It's a real mixed bag of people when it comes to things like sexual orientation. And I said that it's important whether or not you're straight or gay or whatever your sexual orientation is, because we find, for example, that if you're gay, almost 80% of gay furries find their partner in the furry fandom, right? If you're gay and you're in the furry fandom where there's a lot of gay people, you're probably going to find someone that's compatible with you. They have an interest in common with you, and they like the same kinds of things you do, right? If you're straight in the furry fandom, not as likely. Is that it? I'm waiting for the hook.
We want to see you.
Oh, okay, sure. Hello, everyone who can see me now.
I think the light bulb just went on.
Okay, yeah, I had a brilliant idea. All right. So I guess what I was going to say with this, by the way, some of our research suggests that if you're a straight male in the fandom and you're looking for a partner, go hijack someone from another fandom. Go to the anime fandom. Introduce them to furry, right? A lot of furries are anime fans. Introduce them. So when it comes to lesbian, gay, and bisexual furries as compared to straight furries, we found that the furry experience is a little bit different for them. We find, for example, that these folks tend to use the fandom a bit more for escapism. Remember, these are folks who tend to be stigmatized in day-to-day life. These are people who sometimes live in fear of being ostracized, of being picked on at their jobs or their housing situation, of being bullied for being gay, for being bisexual. And so for many of them, the furry fandom is a nice, safe retreat from day-to-day life. Very often, they identify more strongly with their personas than the average straight furry does. They tend to seek out the fandom as a source of social support. These are your allies. These are the people who are there for you when you might not have that support in any other aspect of your life. And yeah, they do tend to feel more anxiety in their day-to-day lives, often because of this ostracism. We can also talk about gender identity in the fandom. And while the fandom is predominantly identified as male, we do find a considerable transgender population within the furry fandom. And in fact, it's been suggested that upwards of 15 to 20% of furries identify as transgender or gender nonconforming. That's way higher than we find in the general population. And when we compare transgender furries to cisgender furries, we tend to find that transgender furries are twice as likely to be Therians. We'll talk about what Therians are in a little bit. They're also much more likely to be artists in the fandom. They tend to identify particularly strongly with their personas, which kind of makes sense. If you have a problem with being misgendered in your day-to-day life, well, if you get to create your persona and imbue it with whatever traits and appearance you want, you can suddenly get rid of some of the misgendering by having people see you the way you want to be seen. That's kind of a wonderful thing for you. And again, like with gay and lesbian furries, we tend to find that transgender furries get more help and social supports from the fandom. We also find that they are more likely to say that even within the fandom, despite it being a very open and accepting place, there's still some issues to work out. The fandom is still not perfectly 100% there. So something to keep in mind.